If you thought Roman Reigns was going to go silence on Jacob Fatu betraying not only Solo Sikoa at Money in the Bank but the entire bloodline, then you have got to be joking. Instead, the tribal chief walked into Smackdown with that slow, heavy silence, you know the one, and made a straight line for the man who shattered everything at Money in the Bank. Jacob Fatu didn't just betray Solo Sikoa. He spit in Roman's face without saying a word. And when Roman showed up, it wasn't to talk. It was to judge. One look. No words. No peace offering. Just pressure. Was this Roman's warning shot? Or did Fatu just sign his own execution? Let's break down exactly what went down in that confrontation, and what it means for the future of the bloodline. If you thought Roman Reigns was going to stay quiet after what went down at Money in the Bank 2025, you haven't been paying attention. This isn't just wrestling. This is war. And war doesn't start with fireworks. It starts with silence. The kind of silence that settles deep in your chest. The kind of silence that makes 20,000 people in an arena forget how to breathe. The kind of silence that walks out of the smoke, dressed in all black, wearing gold on his shoulder and murder in his eyes. Roman Reigns didn't speak when he returned to SmackDown after MITB 2025. He didn't have to. Because when you're the tribal chief, you don't ask questions. You are the answer. But this story, this moment, didn't begin in the ring. It started in betrayal. Let's rewind. Money in the Bank 2025. Las Vegas. A night stacked with chaos, cash-ins, and careers on the line. But everything stopped when Jacob Fatu, the monster from the family tree no one dared to shake, turned on Solo Sikoa. Let's be clear, this wasn't just a heel turn. It was an execution. Solo, positioned as the heir to the bloodline throne in Roman's absence, was left broken in the ring, stunned, betrayed, and humiliated. And Jacob? He didn't say a word. He walked out, cold, calculated, no remorse. Like a lion who didn't kill for power. He killed because it was time. The fans? Shocked. The commentators? Stunned. The bloodline? Shattered. And for 72 hours, the one voice everyone waited to hear from said nothing. No cryptic tweets. No backstage rumors. No head of the table press conference. Roman Reigns disappeared into the shadows. And that's when we knew he was coming. The bloodline has been WWE's greatest saga in decades. This isn't just a faction. It's a dynasty. And Roman Reigns isn't just a champion. He's a kingmaker. From the moment he returned in 2020, Roman built the bloodline brick by brick, first by breaking his cousins, then by bending them to his will. Jey Uso. Jimmy Uso. Solo Sikoa. Even Sami Zayn fell into orbit around the tribal chief before ultimately being cast aside. But Jacob Fatu? Jacob was never meant to kneel. He was the wild card, the nuclear weapon no one thought WWE would unleash. And when he finally showed up, it felt like the family was complete. But just as quickly, he detonated the entire empire. And that betrayal? That wasn't about gold. That wasn't about TV time or title shots. That was personal. So what happens when you don't just betray a brother? You spit in the face of a king? You get judged. Friday night. Smackdown. The lights cut. The beat drops. The crowd erupts. But there's no pyro. No acknowledgement hand raise. Just Roman. Walking with that slow, unshakable calm. Not a smile. Not a word. Not a flicker of doubt. Just that stare. That look. You know the one. And every step he took toward Jacob Fatu in the ring felt like a hammer drop. There were no punches thrown. No microphones lifted. Just one confrontation. Eye to eye. And in that moment, you could feel it, this wasn't a promo. This wasn't a segment. This was a reckoning. Because Roman Reigns didn't come back to reclaim power. He is power. And Jacob Fatu? He didn't just challenge that. He broke the sacred rule, you never cross the chief. The beauty of the bloodline isn't in the belts or betrayals. It's in the stakes. This isn't about who's main eventing WrestleMania. It's about who deserves to carry the family name. Roman took the pressure of generations, of the Anoa'i legacy, and turned it into a reign unlike anything we've seen. But now? Now we're seeing what happens when the foundation cracks. Jacob Fatu didn't just betray Solo. He shattered the myth that Roman had built, that the bloodline was untouchable, unbreakable, unified. So when Roman walked back into that arena, it wasn't to talk it out. It was to judge. Because in his world, there's no second chances. You're either family. Or you're finished. What comes next? Is this the beginning of the end? Is Jacob Fatu trying to start a new bloodline, with him at the head? Where does Solo go now, betrayed, bloodied, and abandoned? And Roman, what's his next move? That's what this video is about. Because to understand what's coming, we need to break down exactly what happened that night. The betrayal. The silence. The confrontation. Every stare. Every step. Every unspoken threat. We're going to pull this story apart piece by piece. Not just as fans, but as students of storytelling. Because this isn't just a feud. This is Shakespeare in steel chairs. A family story soaked in pride, betrayal, and violence. A war with no clear winner. Only consequences. So strap in. Because by the end of this video, you'll see the bloodline like you never have before, and trust me, this was never about wrestling. This was personal from the start. The lights in the arena were electric. The crowd was buzzing. It was Money in the Bank 2025, one of the most anticipated events on WWE's calendar, and the stakes couldn't have been higher. Everything about the atmosphere screamed unpredictability. And yet, nobody saw this coming. In a night built on surprise, betrayal found a new face. Jacob Fatu, once the most feared enforcer in the bloodline, didn't just turn on Solo Sikoa. He burned the flag. He drove a dagger straight into the heart of the family. And in doing so, he broke one of the bloodline's few remaining unspoken codes: protect your own. To understand the weight of that moment, you have to rewind. Not just to the match. Not just to the entrance. You have to rewind to the very idea of the bloodline and what it meant to have someone like Fatu within it. For months, Solo Sikoa had operated like a tank. Silent, aggressive, obedient. He was Roman's enforcer, the executioner of tribal chief mandates. But when Roman stepped away, whether for injury, time off, or strategy, Solo was positioned to carry the torch. Not as a leader, but as a placeholder. A keeper of the flame. And Fatu? He was the hammer in Solo's hand. Fatu debuted under dramatic circumstances just weeks prior. The moment he hit the ring, there was no mistaking it. This man wasn't just a cousin brought in to pad the numbers. He was a beast. The streets of San Jose ran in his veins. His presence wasn't just intimidating, it was suffocating. Built like a war machine, moving like a panther, Jacob Fatu carried the aura of a man who had nothing to lose and everything to destroy. When Roman Reigns brought him into the bloodline, or allowed him to be brought in, nobody questioned the move. If anything, fans believed this was the final seal of invincibility. Another cog in the unstoppable empire. But that's where the problem began. Jacob Fatu was never a cog. He was a bomb waiting to go off. So, when the match at MITB began, and Solo Sikoa marched to the ring with Fatu flanking him, everything felt normal. It felt expected. The dominant bloodline duo. Untouchable. Cold. Calculated. Their opponents? Irrelevant. This wasn't about wins or losses. This was a message match. Solo and Fatu were there to remind the world that the bloodline wasn't fading. Roman or no Roman, the family still ran the business. And for the first 10 minutes of the match, they did exactly that. The action was stiff. Relentless. Fatu hit his signature moves with the kind of violence that makes you rethink your career. Solo remained composed, explosive, focused on asserting dominance. But as the match crept toward its final act, the rhythm changed. Suddenly, Fatu was less reactive. His tags were delayed. His body language shifted. His gaze wasn't fixed on the opponents anymore. It started to drift. To Solo. There's a moment, frozen in screenshots, slowed down by internet sleuths, where Fatu stands on the apron, staring into the ring. Solo is on one knee, recovering from a double super kick, and Fatu doesn't move to help. He doesn't shout encouragement. He just watches. That moment lasted maybe 4 seconds. But it said everything. The betrayal came swiftly, without ceremony. As Solo crawled toward the corner, arm extended, the crowd sensed something. A ripple in the air. Fatu dropped from the apron. Walked around the ring. Stared his own cousin in the face. And then? He super kicked him. Not a half-hearted shot. Not a tease. Not a swerve that gets reversed later. A full-on, lights-out, point-of-no-return super kick. Solo collapsed. Confused. Dazed. Vulnerable. Fatu rolled into the ring and unleashed hell. A pop-up Samoan drop. A running cannonball. A moonsault off the top rope with the precision of a sniper and the weight of betrayal behind it. The crowd didn't boo. They didn't cheer. They gasped. Because it wasn't just a heel turn. It was a blood sacrifice. The referees rushed the ring. The bell was never rung. The match result never mattered. The story had already been told. Fatu stood over Solo's motionless body and stared at the crowd like they were next. He didn't gloat. He didn't laugh. He didn't explain. He simply walked out. Head high. Shoulders square. No music. No exit cue. Just silence. And that silence echoed through the WWE universe for days. In that one moment, Fatu did what no one else had ever done in the Bloodline saga. He attacked from within, not for power, but for principle. And the principle? He didn't recognize Solo as his leader. And maybe, just maybe, he didn't recognize Roman either. The shockwave wasn't just felt in that arena. It pulsed through every corner of WWE. Backstage reports described genuine unease among the locker room. Not because they thought the story was real, but because the performance was too good. Too calculated. Too brutal. It was real in every way that mattered. Commentators scrambled to make sense of it. Some said Fatu was tired of being seen as muscle. Others guessed he was trying to trigger Roman's return. A third camp suggested something deeper, that Fatu believed he was the true heir. That Solo was never fit to lead. That Roman had gone soft. Theories multiplied like wildfire. But Fatu didn't speak. And WWE didn't issue any statements. They didn't have to. Because the message was clear, the bloodline was not just cracking. It was cannibalizing itself. And in the middle of that chaos stood Jacob Fatu. The man who did what Jey Uso was too broken to do, what Jimmy Uso was too conflicted to finish, what Sami Zayn was too loyal to consider. He struck the heart. And when you do that, there are only two possible outcomes. You either become the new king, or the old king returns to bury you. And 3 nights later, Roman Reigns did return. But that part's coming. For now, the story stands on its own. A brutal betrayal. A stunned crowd. A family torn from the inside. Jacob Fatu didn't just turn on Solo Sikoa at Money in the Bank. He rewrote the code of the bloodline in blood. And nothing will ever be the same. Solo Sikoa wasn't supposed to fall like that. Not in the middle of the ring. Not in front of millions. And definitely not at the hands of his own blood. But there he was, flat on his back at Money in the Bank 2025, staring up at the lights, with Jacob Fatu walking away and the entire narrative of the bloodline cracking around him. For months, if not years, WWE had been grooming Solo as the enforcer. The last line of defense. The silent hammer of Roman Reigns' will. He didn't talk much. He didn't smile. He didn't need to. His purpose was clear: protect the family, punish the disobedient, and make sure Roman's legacy remained untouchable. But when Roman stepped away, whether it was a planned absence, strategic silence, or just time to let the rest of the faction grow, Solo was left standing at the front of the line. Not as a ruler. Not as a visionary. But as a placeholder. A placeholder who believed he was next. This wasn't delusion. This wasn't fantasy booking. The seeds were there. Every time Solo delivered a Samoan spike, every time he picked up a microphone and grunted through a threat, every time he looked into the camera with that cold, shark-like expression, the WWE Universe saw the future forming. He was the heir. The next tribal chief, whether Roman said it aloud or not. But Jacob Fatu shattered that illusion in under 3 minutes. That's the real story here, not just the betrayal, but the humiliation. Because Solo didn't just get blindsided. He got deconstructed. In wrestling, betrayal is currency. It can elevate you or bury you. When Seth Rollins turned on the Shield, he became a megastar. When Tommaso Ciampa attacked Johnny Gargano, he became the most hated man in NXT. But when betrayal is directed at you, and you don't see it coming, it's something else entirely. It's exposure. And that's exactly what happened to Solo Sikoa. Let's talk about perception versus reality. For weeks, Solo had been booked as the unmovable object. He crushed mid-carders. He maimed challengers. He stomped through locker rooms like a one-man demolition squad. With Paul Heyman behind him and Jacob Fatu beside him, he looked like the embodiment of the next era. But perception doesn't matter when the curtain gets ripped away. At MITB, Solo wasn't a juggernaut. He wasn't a threat. He was a target. And when Fatu struck, Solo didn't respond like a leader. He didn't rally. He didn't survive. He didn't even fight back. He froze. And that freeze, those seconds where he didn't know where he was, what had happened, or why it was happening, will haunt him for the rest of his career. Think about the psychology of that. Wrestling is storytelling at its most physical. Every look, every movement, every reaction tells you something deeper about the characters. And Solo's reaction told a whole story. He didn't see it coming. He didn't prepare for it. And worst of all, he didn't understand it. That's the part that cuts the deepest. Because betrayal you see coming can be managed. You can build a comeback. You can craft a revenge arc. You can say, I knew this would happen, and now I'm coming for blood. But betrayal that catches you wide open? Betrayal from someone you trusted? That leaves a scar that changes everything. Solo Sikoa wasn't just physically beaten. He was psychologically wrecked. Let's zoom out and look at the aftermath. Backstage reports say Solo refused medical help immediately after the match. That he stormed out of the arena. That no one, not Heyman, not security, not producers, could calm him down. He wasn't hurt. He was raging. Not at Fatu. At himself. Because when your entire identity is built around dominance, and someone rips it out from under you on a global stage, what's left? You start questioning everything. Was Roman right to leave him in charge? Was Fatu always waiting for his moment? Was Solo ever really in control? That's the mental tailspin Solo Sikoa is caught in right now. And WWE is capitalizing on it brilliantly. The following Smackdown didn't feature Solo Sikoa in the ring. He didn't come out screaming for vengeance. He didn't cut a promo. He wasn't seen backstage. He was absent. And that silence, his silence, was deafening. Because absence after betrayal doesn't read as strategy. It reads as shock. It reads as weakness. It reads as a man who doesn't know what to do next. The fans noticed. On social media, the hashtags flipped. Solo Squash trended for nearly 24 hours post-MITB. Memes flooded the internet. One of the most brutal? A photoshopped image of Solo sitting alone in Roman's empty throne, with a caption, "Some kings weren't meant to wear the crown." Brutal. But not inaccurate. Because the truth is, Solo Sikoa's rise was always borrowed power. He wasn't crowned. He was installed. His authority came from Roman. His backup came from Heyman. His muscle came from Fatu. When all of that gets stripped away, what do you have? You have a man who now has to rebuild, not just his credibility, but his entire identity. So what happens next? Solo Sikoa is at a crossroads. One path leads to revenge. A brutal, violent warpath where he becomes everything Roman ever wanted, merciless, calculating, emotionally disconnected. That's a story fans would rally behind. The wronged cousin. The fallen prince rising from the ashes. But there's another path. The collapse. Because not everyone comes back stronger after betrayal. Some characters crack. Some spiral. Some turn into shadows of their former selves, driven by bitterness, clouded by rage. And WWE has written both stories before. For Solo, this isn't just about payback. It's about proving he belongs. That he wasn't a stand-in. That he wasn't a prop in someone else's legacy. It's about proving he's a Bloodline original, not just a supporting actor in Roman Reigns' long reign. But the odds are stacked. Because Jacob Fatu didn't just take Solo out of the spotlight. He humiliated him. And humiliation is harder to recover from than injury. So the big question moving forward isn't just, will Solo get revenge? It's, can he survive the shame? Because in the Bloodline, power isn't given. It's taken. And right now, Solo has nothing left but rage. How he uses that will define the next chapter. But one thing is certain. The Solo Sikoa that walked into Money in the Bank as heir apparent? He's dead. And whatever comes next will either be a resurrection. Or a burial. Jacob Fatu didn't come to play. He didn't come to fill a slot. He didn't arrive on Smackdown looking to find his place in the Bloodline hierarchy. He came to break it. And at Money in the Bank 2025, he did just that, with no words, no theatrics, and no remorse. If Solo Sikoa was the enforcer, the executor of Roman Reigns' orders, then Jacob Fatu was always something darker. Something older. Something more dangerous. To understand why his betrayal wasn't just shocking but inevitable, you have to understand who Jacob Fatu really is, not just in the WWE storyline, but in real life, in wrestling history, and in the bloodline he was born into. Because Jacob Fatu doesn't wrestle like someone trying to win. He wrestles like someone with something to prove. Let's start at the roots. Jacob Fatu is a member of the legendary Anoa'i family. The same family tree that gave us Roman Reigns, the Usos, Rikishi, Umaga, Yokozuna, The Rock, and countless others who built WWE's empire brick by brick. But while others in the family rose in the global spotlight, Jacob Fatu took a different path. His early wrestling journey didn't pass through the Performance Center. It didn't start under the glitz of WrestleMania banners. It began in the trenches. Before WWE, Jacob Fatu was a monster in Major League Wrestling, MLW. Where he wasn't just dominant, he was terrifying. He held the MLW World Heavyweight Championship for over 800 days. Not by ducking opponents. Not by cheating the system. But by breaking bodies. Pure force. Raw energy. Controlled chaos. His style isn't traditional Samoan. It's not about just being heavy and tough. It's speed, agility, violence with grace. He moves like a cruiserweight and hits like a freight train. He's the kind of wrestler who looks like he's going to eat you alive and then jumps off the top rope like a gymnast. And all of it, was brewing just outside WWE's gates for years. So when he finally arrived, when he made his surprise debut alongside Solo Sikoa earlier this year, the internet erupted. This wasn't just another family member. This was the missing piece. The cousin who didn't come from privilege. The one who fought his way in from the outside. The one who didn't want to be accepted, he wanted to take over. And when Roman Reigns seemingly approved his inclusion in the Bloodline, fans didn't question it. The fit felt right. Too right. But Jacob Fatu never smiled. Never bowed. Never truly acknowledged Roman. That was the first clue. He walked beside Solo, but never behind him. He stood in the ring with Paul Heyman, but never under his wing. And when he hit his moves, those signature, brutal combinations, there was no celebration. No posturing. No ego. Just destruction. Like a man carrying out a mission. So what was the mission? Was it to destroy the Bloodline from the inside? Was it to make a statement? Or was it something even more personal? Maybe Jacob Fatu wasn't looking to betray. Maybe he was looking to cleanse. Because from his perspective, the Bloodline was already broken. Think about it, Roman Reigns, the self-declared tribal chief, had built his empire on manipulation, dominance, and intimidation. He used Jay and Jimmy. He cast out Sammy. He turned Solo into a weapon. He held onto the championship with a death grip. But where was the honor? Where was the legacy? To a man like Jacob Fatu, born in the same bloodline, raised on the same streets, that version of leadership might have looked like weakness. Roman created followers. Jacob wanted warriors. So when Solo began acting like a king in waiting, barking orders, walking like he ran the show, Jacob Fatu didn't see power. He saw a puppet. And he cut the strings. There's another layer here, one that cuts deeper than storyline. Jacob Fatu has always carried a chip on his shoulder. Not just because he came up outside WWE, but because he watched as others from his family, many of them with less edge, less grit, less realness, got crowned before him. So when he walked into WWE, he walked in with something to settle. Not with the fans. Not with the locker room. With his own blood. In his mind, maybe he wasn't betraying Solo. Maybe he was liberating the Bloodline from false prophets. And maybe, just maybe, he believes he's the rightful heir. Not Roman. Not Solo. Not anyone else. That mindset turns a heel turn into a revolution. And that's what made the MITB moment so dangerous. Jacob didn't turn to rise in the ranks. He turned because the ranks are irrelevant to him. He's not playing their game. He's rewriting it. That's what makes him so effective, and so terrifying. Because in WWE, most characters are driven by something simple. A title. A grudge. A spotlight. A paycheck. But Jacob Fatu feels like he's driven by something deeper. Pride. Purity. Payback. And that's the most combustible combination of all. Since his debut, everything Jacob has done has been deliberate. Watch the tapes. Study the moments. He doesn't waste movement. He doesn't rush feuds. He lets people get comfortable, and then he strikes. He let Solo believe they were equals. He let Roman believe he was loyal. He let the WWE Universe believe he was just another piece of the puzzle. Then, when no one was looking, he flipped the entire board. And walked away without blinking. He doesn't care about fan reaction. He doesn't cut long promos. He doesn't beg for screen time. He makes moments. And he lets the world burn in the silence afterward. That's the mark of a monster with a mission. It's what makes Jacob Fatu one of the most dangerous men in professional wrestling right now, not just because of what he's done, but because of what he hasn't done yet. He hasn't explained himself. He hasn't asked for anything. He hasn't declared war. He's just acted. And that makes him unpredictable. Where does this go? Does Jacob try to take over the bloodline? Does he declare himself the new head of the table? Does he destroy the entire thing from within and start something new? The scariest part? He might not know either. He might just be following instinct. Violence as a compass. Pain as a language. That's what makes him more dangerous than Roman. Because Roman manipulates. He schemes. He calculates. Jacob just strikes. So when you ask, why did he betray Solo? The real question is, why did it take him so long? Where was Roman? For 3 days after Money in the Bank 2025, the world waited. Fans waited. Wrestlers waited. Commentators speculated. Everyone held their breath. Because in the wake of Jacob Fatu's betrayal, there was one voice everyone expected to hear, the voice of the tribal chief. But Roman Reigns was silent. No tweets. No video package. No Heyman statement. Nothing. He was gone. And the question echoed louder than any entrance theme, where was Roman? The moment Jacob Fatu laid Solo Sikoa out in the center of the ring, the Bloodline's mythology collapsed in real time. And yet the man who built it, who enforced loyalty like law, vanished without a trace. It wasn't the first time Roman had disappeared, but this time was different. This time, it felt deliberate. Roman Reigns has always used absence as a weapon. Unlike most superstars who stay constantly visible, working week after week to maintain relevance, Roman has spent the last several years redefining what it means to hold power in WWE. He appears when he chooses. Speaks when it matters. Moves only when the moment demands it. He's not a presence. He's an event. So when Jacob Fatu shattered Solo Sikoa in front of the world, the expectation was that Roman would appear instantly. That he'd storm the ring. That he'd reassert control. But he didn't. Because Roman doesn't act out of emotion. He acts out of positioning. And to understand his silence, you have to understand what Roman values above everything else. Control. Control of perception. Control of loyalty. Control of fear. And control isn't reclaimed by screaming into a microphone the moment something goes wrong. Control is about knowing when to disappear, and when to return so hard that the world forgets who else was even in the room. That's what Roman did. By going dark after the betrayal, he turned all the spotlight to Jacob Fatu, and let it burn. He let the internet devour him. He let fans crown him the next alpha. He let Solo spiral publicly. He let the story expand. Because Roman understands one core truth: you don't crush rebellion by reacting. You crush it by making them think you're not watching. So where was he? Let's look at the theories. Theory 1, Roman was genuinely caught off guard. Some analysts speculated that Jacob's betrayal wasn't approved by the tribal chief. That Roman had given his blessing to Fatu's involvement but didn't expect that kind of rebellion. The idea here is that Roman's silence was a result of betrayal, not of Solo, but of himself. But there's a flaw in that logic. Roman doesn't do unprepared. If Jacob Fatu was even adjacent to the bloodline, Roman knew what he was capable of. He's not naive. He doesn't make decisions on emotion. He builds dynasties. So that leads us to theory 2, Roman wanted this to happen. There's a darker possibility. One that Roman fans, and critics, have whispered about. What if Roman allowed the betrayal? Think about it. Roman's been watching Solo Sikoa rise. Watching him take on more power. Watching Heyman stand closer to him than to Roman. Watching fans start to ask, is Solo next? Roman doesn't like next. Roman likes now. So what if Roman brought Fatu in not just as an enforcer, but as a test? A test Solo failed. That version of the story suggests Roman knew Jacob Fatu's hunger. Knew his mindset. Knew he'd never accept orders for long. And instead of controlling him, Roman let him loose, like a weapon tossed into a power struggle. That would explain the silence. Because if that's true, then Roman didn't disappear. He watched. And when the dust settled, he walked out, not confused, not emotional, but ready to collect the toll. The third theory is the most fascinating. Roman was waiting for Jacob to cross the line. It's one thing to let a cousin into the fold. It's another to let him shake things up. But it's something else entirely when that cousin lays hands on Solo. If you believe in Roman's psychology, you know that he doesn't respond to accidents. He responds to threats to legacy. Solo was his hand-picked executioner. His war dog. His last barrier between Roman's reign and chaos. Letting Fatu cross that line wasn't a mistake, it was bait. Roman didn't react immediately because he wanted to see how far Jacob would go. He got his answer at MITB. And 3 days later, he answered back, without saying a word. Because when Roman finally returned on Smackdown, it wasn't with fury. It wasn't with chaos. It was with that slow, deliberate walk to the ring. That blank stare. That crushing silence. He wasn't coming back to confront. He was coming back to judge. And that's the difference. Anyone can yell. Anyone can throw fists. But when Roman returned, he walked into the ring and stood in front of Jacob Fatu, and didn't speak. Because Roman understands something most superstars don't: words can be twisted. Actions can be dodged. But presence? Presence is final. In that moment, Roman wasn't asking questions. He wasn't seeking an explanation. He was making it clear: I saw what you did. I let you do it. And now, you owe me a consequence. This return was about establishing dominance, not over Jacob, but over the narrative. That's Roman's true power. He doesn't just dominate men. He dominates momentum. He doesn't just lead the bloodline. He defines the terms of rebellion. And in those 3 days of silence, he made the world forget Solo. Forget the betrayal. Forget the carnage. All anyone could think about was the return. Where is Roman? When will he speak? What will he do? That's how power works. It makes absence feel like an earthquake. So where was Roman? Exactly where he wanted to be. Watching. Waiting. Calculating. Letting the usurper write his own sentence. And when he returned, he didn't need a gavel. He just needed that look. Because in Roman Reigns' kingdom, there are no warnings. Only verdicts. And Jacob Fatu? He just entered trial by fire. June 13, 2025. The arena was full, but nobody was really there. Not until the lights dropped. Not until the bass hit. Not until Roman Reigns walked through the smoke. Smackdown had been buzzing with chaos since Money in the Bank. Commentary teams were scrambling to spin the narrative. WWE's production truck was cutting together betrayal packages with Jacob Fatu's slow-mo shots and freeze frames of Solo's blank face as he fell to the mat. Social media was rabid with conspiracy theories and who's the real tribal chief debates. But the audience wasn't interested in spin. They weren't looking for answers from Michael Cole or Corey Graves. They were waiting for him. And when Roman Reigns finally appeared, everything else stopped. No catchphrase. No pyro. No lifted title. Just him. Wearing black. Walking slowly. Eyes locked dead ahead. The sound of the crowd hit like a wave: cheers, boos, disbelief, even silence in pockets where fans simply couldn't process what they were seeing. Roman Reigns had returned. But this wasn't a comeback. This wasn't a pop. This was a procession. Each step he took down that ramp felt loaded. Calculated. Heavy. Like a king walking into a battlefield already littered with traitors. He didn't look left. Didn't look right. Didn't even flinch when a fan screamed, "You gonna fix this, tribal chief?" Because Roman wasn't here to fix anything. He was here to deliver judgment. Let's break down the moment. In the ring stood Jacob Fatu, calm, arms folded, eyes unreadable. No backup. No flinch. Just waiting. He wasn't backing down. But he wasn't attacking either. He just stood there, letting the weight of Roman's approach fill the room like smoke. This wasn't a confrontation. It was a countdown. And Roman didn't bring a microphone. That's when you knew. There would be no speech. No demand for acknowledgement. No emotional monologue about betrayal. Roman doesn't speak when words don't serve him. He speaks with presence. He climbed the steps slowly. Entered the ring like it was his courtroom. And then he walked straight up to Jacob Fatu, nose to nose, chest to chest. The camera zoomed in tight. You could see it in their eyes. No blink. No twitch. Just tension, coiled and sharp like a blade held between their throats. This wasn't a family reunion. It was a verdict being delivered in silence. Commentary tried to speak over it. Tried to explain the look. Tried to assign meaning. But they were wasting breath. Because everyone watching understood the real message, Roman saw what happened. And now he was measuring Fatu's fate. Was he going to strike? Was he going to exile him? Or was this something worse? That's what made it chilling. Roman didn't attack. He didn't lay down the law. He didn't call security or demand answers. He just stood there, eyes boring into Fatu like a scalpel. And Fatu? He didn't blink either. The tension wasn't just physical. It was existential. Who are you? What gives you the right? Do you really think you're ready? That's what Roman's eyes asked. And Fatu's silence answered back, yes. This wasn't defiance. It was declaration. Jacob Fatu wasn't intimidated. He wasn't looking for forgiveness. He stood in front of the man who built the bloodline and made it clear, I don't need your permission. That silence? It wasn't just dramatic. It was strategic. Because if Roman throws a punch, he validates the threat. If he speaks, he gives Jacob relevance. But by doing nothing, Roman created the ultimate mind game. The fans didn't know what to make of it. Half of them wanted him to spear Fatu on the spot. The other half saw something deeper, recognition. Not approval. Not surrender. But recognition. Roman saw in Jacob what he once saw in himself, an unstoppable force ready to destroy anyone, even family, to claim power. So, he left it there. After a long, drawn-out moment, 15, maybe 20 full seconds of stillness, Roman turned and walked away. Just like that. No music. No pose. Just out. And that walk said more than any promo could. It said, you just made your move. Now it's my turn. Because this wasn't a confrontation. It was a warning shot. Not to Fatu. To everyone else. To Solo. To Heyman. To the locker room. To the WWE universe. Roman Reigns was back. And he hadn't forgiven anything. The fallout began immediately. Commentary scrambled to make sense of it. Michael Cole called it the coldest stare-down in Bloodline history. Corey Graves compared it to a lion circling another predator. Social media exploded with theories. Is Roman going to recruit Fatu? Did Fatu pass some twisted test? Was that a challenge or a silent truce? Nobody knew. And that's the brilliance of it. Because Roman left the ring not with answers, but with tension. He didn't settle anything. He unsettled everything. The locker room was reportedly on edge the following week. According to insider reports, WWE Creative kept everything tight-lipped. Not even some performers knew what was going to happen. Jacob Fatu wasn't scheduled for any matches. Roman wasn't listed on the card for next week. And that silence hung like fog. Not just between Roman and Jacob, but across the entire bloodline. Because now, the rules have changed. Roman isn't just the tribal chief anymore. He's the reckoner. He doesn't speak to you when you betray him. He stares you down until you question your existence. And Jacob Fatu? He didn't blink. Which means this story is far from over. That moment on Smackdown wasn't closure. It was ignition. The war for the soul of the bloodline has begun. And there are no sides left, only survivors. The bloodline wasn't built on unity. It was built on control. And where there is control, there is always rebellion. So when Jacob Fatu betrayed Solo Sikoa at Money in the Bank, it didn't mark the collapse of the bloodline. It simply followed the pattern, a legacy of betrayal that's defined the faction from the very beginning. What happened between Fatu and Solo wasn't the first fracture in the bloodline story. It was just the latest cut in a long list of wounds. To fully understand the impact of what Jacob did, and why it hit so hard, you have to go back to the start. To the roots. To the very first lie Roman Reigns told when he crowned himself tribal chief. It wasn't, "I'm here to save the family." It was, "I'm here to lead it." The difference matters. Because from day one, Roman didn't unite the bloodline. He conquered it. Let's go back to 2020. Jey Uso stepped up during a time of uncertainty. Roman had returned from his pandemic hiatus and transformed into something new, cold, brutal, regal. And when Jey challenged him, Roman didn't beat him in a match. He broke him in a story. At Clash of Champions and again at Hell in a Cell, Roman beat Jey into submission, literally and emotionally. Jey didn't lose those matches. He was forced into loyalty. Not because he wanted to follow, but because Roman made it clear, "You're either with me, or beneath me." And that was the first betrayal. Not of Jey by Roman, but of trust. Of the idea that family was sacred. Roman weaponized kinship, and Jey paid the price. It didn't stop there. The next to fall? Jimmy Uso. When Jimmy returned from injury, he tried to stand by his brother. He tried to resist Roman's rule. But like Jey, he was manipulated. Roman didn't need to throw punches. He used guilt. He used tradition. He used the weight of legacy. He played the long game. And he won. Jimmy folded. Together, the Usos became Roman's right and left hands. Not because they believed in him, but because he broke them until they believed in nothing else. But submission always breeds resentment. In time, both Jey and Jimmy would rebel. Jey cracked first. After years of serving Roman, being his main event soldier, Jey finally snapped. The toll became too much. The gaslighting, the mental abuse, the pressure of loyalty, it all boiled over. And at Night of Champions 2023, Jey did what fans had begged for. He super-kicked Roman Reigns in the face. It was a moment fans still replay on loop. Jey, face twisted in pain, screaming, "I'm done with this," as the crowd exploded. But that rebellion didn't lead to freedom. It led to pain. Because once you turn on Roman, he doesn't just retaliate. He isolates. Jey was exiled. Roman moved on. Jimmy stepped deeper into the darkness. And then he betrayed Jey. In one of the most shocking swerves of the entire Bloodline arc, Jimmy kicked Jey in the face and cost him a world title match. Why? That was the genius. Nobody knew. Not Jey. Not the fans. Not even Jimmy, it seemed. Roman didn't have to explain it. He simply stood in the shadows as another brother turned on his own. Because that's the empire Roman built, not a family tree, but a chain of betrayals. And then came Sami Zayn. The outsider. The honorary Yus. The fan favorite. For a time, Sami breathed new life into the bloodline. His comedic timing, his nervous energy, his unlikely bond with Jay, it created a new chapter. But Roman never trusted him. Not really. He kept Sami close but never let him in. And when Sami refused to attack Kevin Owens with a chair at the 2023 Royal Rumble, Roman exploded. That night, Sami broke the spell. He struck Roman. He made his choice. But like every rebel in the bloodline, he paid for it in blood. He was beaten. Exiled. Humiliated. The message was clear: leave the bloodline, and you suffer. Until Solo Sikoa came along. Solo debuted like a ghost. Silent. Menacing. He didn't need to earn Roman's trust. He was handed power on arrival. Unlike Jay or Jimmy or Sami, Solo didn't question orders. He executed them. Roman relied on Solo not because he trusted him, but because he didn't have to. Solo didn't rebel. He removed rebels. But even that had a time limit. Because when Roman stepped back earlier this year, and Solo was left to lead, the cracks began to show. Solo wasn't Roman. He didn't have the presence. The gravitas. The calculated cruelty. He had force. But force without strategy is just noise. Enter Jacob Fatu. Roman's likely final chess piece. Fatu wasn't a follower. He wasn't family by submission. He came in like a force of nature. And once again, history repeated itself. Just like Sami turned on Roman. Just like Jimmy turned on Jay. Just like Jay turned on Roman. Jacob Fatu turned on Solo. Because in the bloodline, betrayal isn't a shock. It's a cycle. This family isn't united by love. It's united by pressure. And pressure doesn't build diamonds in WWE. It breaks men. That's what the fans now realize. The bloodline saga has never been about dominance. It's been about decay. Each new betrayal chips away at the mythology Roman tried to create. Each rebellion proves that control built on fear never lasts. So when Jacob Fatu laid Solo out in the ring, it wasn't a new act. It was a necessary one. The continuation of a prophecy nobody wanted to believe. That the bloodline, WWE's most powerful faction in a generation, was always doomed to implode. Because you can only rule with fear for so long. Eventually, the people you ruled remember who they are. And they come for your crown. There was a time when Roman Reigns walked into a WWE arena and commanded respect with a nod. Now, he walks in and people look over their shoulders. That's the shift. That's the transformation. Roman Reigns is no longer the godfather of the bloodline. He's its executioner. The evolution wasn't sudden. It wasn't explosive. It happened gradually, like a cold front moving in, quiet, relentless, inevitable. The man who once claimed his leadership was about protection, about tradition, about holding the family together, now walks like a judge with no interest in mercy. To understand who Roman is now, you have to look at who he was when this all began. In 2020, Roman Reigns returned to WWE with a mission. Not just to dominate, not just to reclaim the championship scene, but to redefine it. Gone was the smiling babyface. The merch-pushing good guy. He came back leaner, colder, and carrying a chip the size of the WWE Universe on his shoulder. And with Paul Heyman at his side, he did something no one thought possible: he reversed the fan narrative. Roman, once booed out of arenas, became the centerpiece of a storyline that felt Shakespearean in scope. Family. Loyalty. Betrayal. Power. Roman wasn't just a champion. He was a symbol. The tribal chief. But let's be clear, the version of Roman who claimed to protect his family, that man is gone. What we're seeing now is something much more dangerous. We're seeing the final form of a man who's lost interest in diplomacy. A man who's watched every person he trusted turn on him or fall in battle. Jimmy. Sammy. Even Heyman, emotionally if not literally. And now? Solo. Jacob Fatu's betrayal at Money in the Bank wasn't just a message to Solo. It was a challenge to Roman's legacy. It forced Roman to ask the question he's been avoiding: if my empire can be broken by my own blood, was I ever in control? But instead of answering that question with vulnerability, Roman responded the only way a man like him knows how: by turning colder. He didn't come back to reclaim leadership. He came back to punish insubordination. The difference is everything. Early in the Bloodline saga, Roman Reigns used manipulation as his greatest tool. He gaslit Jey into submission. He pulled Jimmy into his orbit through guilt. He made Sammy feel valued, then discarded him the moment he stepped out of line. He built his empire on emotional control. But emotions are expensive. And Roman has run out of patience. The man who walked into Smackdown post-MITB wasn't interested in speeches. He didn't acknowledge Jacob Fatu with words. He looked him in the eyes and said everything without saying a thing. Because Roman's graduated past talking. Now, he delivers consequences. It's the same transformation we've seen in other iconic characters: Walter White, Tony Soprano, Stringer Bell. The moment they realize they can't protect what they've built, they start executing anything that threatens it. This isn't survival anymore. This is scorched earth. Let's look at the signs. First, the silence. Roman's choice not to respond immediately to MITB was deliberate. He didn't run to WWE headquarters. He didn't do a sit-down with Heyman. He waited. And when he returned, it wasn't with ceremony. It was with judgment. Second, the stare down. That ring confrontation with Jacob Fatu wasn't a teaser. It wasn't a promo segment. It was an interrogation. Roman didn't raise his voice. He didn't posture. He assessed. And you could see it in his eyes, the math. What is this man to me? A threat? A rival? Or a weapon I haven't fully shaped yet? That's Roman now. Everything is strategy. No emotion. No redemption. No family dinners. Just outcomes. The third sign? His posture in the company. Roman Reigns hasn't chased gold since WrestleMania. He hasn't talked about titles. Because at this point, the title doesn't matter. He is the title. The power doesn't live in the belt. It lives in his name. In the fear he commands. In the reactions he doesn't even need to ask for anymore. And when you operate at that level, you stop thinking like a champion. You start thinking like a warlord. Which leads us to the central truth of this scene. Roman Reigns no longer cares who loves him. He only cares who obeys. It's no longer about keeping the family together. It's about making sure the pieces that remain know what happens when you step out of line. He's become the executioner. And what's even more chilling? He's good at it. He doesn't need a stable of yes men anymore. He doesn't need Heyman whispering in his ear every second. He doesn't even need backup. Because he's not playing politics. He's running a dictatorship. And if Jacob Fatu thinks this is a game of who's tougher, he's in for a rude awakening. Roman isn't fighting for dominance. He's fighting to erase any trace of rebellion. Because once someone strikes at your empire, you don't rebuild. You eliminate the threat. So when Roman stared Jacob down, that wasn't hesitation. It was calculation. How do I end this? What move leaves no questions? What action resets the hierarchy so hard that no one dares breathe without my permission? The question now isn't whether Roman will fight Jacob Fatu. It's what version of Roman we'll see when that time comes. Not the manipulator. Not the leader. Not the head of the table. But the man who executes traitors. Because in Roman's world, betrayal isn't just punished. It's erased. And that erasure? It's coming. You can see it in the eyes. You can feel it in the crowd. Roman Reigns has stopped trying to rule with respect. Now, he rules with fear.